From the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., Call on Congress. The program discussing national issues that affect Oklahoma. Your host, U.S. Representative Tom Cole.
Thank you today for joining me for another edition of Cole on Congress. Today's guest really needs no introduction to the people of Oklahoma because, frankly, she's among our state's best-known public figures. Congresswoman Mary Fallin has served as our lieutenant governor, the first Republican and the first woman to ever hold that job for 12 years, and now represents Oklahoma, Pottawatomie, and Seminole counties in the United States Congress. I can tell you is off to a terrific start, so it's great to have you here and visit with you a little bit about what you're finding life like in Washington, D.C. and in the Congress of the United States.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and what a great public service you're giving to Oklahoma.
Well, just because I'm getting you on the show. That's
that too. That too.
Well, tell me a little bit what it's been like. Obviously, a big transition, moving from lieutenant governor to the Congress.
You know, I told some people the other day, moving from lieutenant governor to Congress, that what I can definitely tell you with absolute certainty about Congress is that it is never boring. There's always something exciting going on in Washington, D.C. And, of course, this is a very serious job, a very important time in our nation's history when you're talking about a presidential election, so many critical issues on the forefront for Congress. And so it's really been a great honor to have the opportunity to be able to represent Oklahoma, as you know, in this wonderful nation and in this great job.
Well, you know, what a lot of people don't know is, of course, you were a very experienced legislator before you were lieutenant governor in the state of Oklahoma. And so it's not like the legislative arena is a new arena for you in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I did have a chance to serve in the Oklahoma State Legislature, as you did too, and it was a great privilege to do that. And, of course, I moved on into the executive branch and had the opportunity to work with you when you were Secretary of State with Governor Keating, and we had a great run at it for eight years, I guess it was, 8 years or so total. So I enjoyed that, and of course now we've got the federal side of the issues, and there is a little bit of similarity between the state level legislating and debating the issues, writing a bill, working with different constituents groups, and then of course working in Congress. The difference, I guess you'd say, is that people back in Oklahoma get to see you a little bit more, and of course you're here in Washington, and a lot of Oklahoma people come up here to see us, and of course we go home when we can as much as possible, but you do get to see Oklahoma people a little bit more when you're in the Oklahoma legislature.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the things you're up to, because you're on some of the most important committees in Congress, and particularly your work on transportation and infrastructure, where you are the only Oklahoman in the House that represents us on a really critical committee for your district, but frankly for the entire state.
I am very honored to have a position on the Transportation Committee. It is one of the top committees, as you know, here in Washington, D.C. There were only 2 freshmen Republican appointed to that committee, and I got one of the seats, so it was a great honor. It is a very important committee because it deals with our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, our waterways, busing and transportation issues, federal buildings, aviation, security, all those different things. So I'm very pleased to have a position on that, and I've got a lot of critical issues facing Oklahoma as it relates to transportation, whether it's our I-40 crosstown that we're moving and trying to create a better crossroads for America where I-35 and I-40 meet. And of course, the funding of that is critical to our state. And then our bridges in Oklahoma. We actually are rated one of the top states in the nation with the highest number of bridge deficiencies. Not that we have bridges that are going to collapse, but just bridges that need some structural repair or help or replacement. And as we prepare this year to enter into the writing of our highway reauthorization bill, I'll be in a key position for Oklahoma to look out for our needs.
If you had to focus on the 2 or 3 biggest transportation issues that you think Oklahoma faces, what would they be?
I think it's a funding issue. Everybody's always trying to find the money to repair roads or build new areas where you have higher traffic rates. Congestion is also a big issue. Of course, our airlines, we have the FAA Training Center in Oklahoma City, which is very important to Oklahoma. We have a maintenance and repair facility in Tulsa. And so the aviation aerospace industry is very critical for our state, and so I'm hoping I'll be a good watchdog and person that can help on those two big issues.
Well, let's talk a little bit about particularly the aeronautical industry, because you were such a leader in this as lieutenant governor. I think you were probably the first lieutenant governor to ever make it a special focus of your time and attention. So you probably came to Congress, quite frankly, with a better knowledge about Oklahoma's aeronautical industry and the opportunities there than maybe any member we've ever had. Tell us, from your perspective, what are some of the big challenges, but what are also some of the opportunities in front of us for the aeronautical industry in the state?
Well, aviation, and you're right, aviation is very important to Oklahoma. We have over 400 jobs, 400 companies that have jobs related to aerospace in our state. And of course the military bases, Tinker Air Force Base, which is in your district, and I have some of the employees in my district, is very important as far as the military installations in our nation. And so making sure that we have the prepared workforce, that they have the right educational background to take the jobs that are needed in aerospace, to make sure that we have fair rules and regulations, that we have good incentives for the industry to want to come to Oklahoma, and that means keeping our workers' compensation rates low, having fair tort reform, making sure we have a good educational system, whether it's higher education, career tech training. Those are all things that are important to the aerospace industry. And of course, as I mentioned, the FAA Air Traffic Controller School that's in Oklahoma City is important to Oklahoma for jobs and also for air traffic controllers.
Well, you've also fallen, I'm going to get back to transportation in a minute, but let's talk about your other committee as well. You're on small business and recently became a ranking member, I understand, on one of the subcommittees, which is a big deal. I'm going to tell you, I was never a ranking member as a freshman. I'm still not a ranking member on any subcommittee. So to reach that position this quickly is a real testament to your skill.
Well, thank you. And of course, small business is very important to Oklahoma. 98% of our businesses in our state have 100 or fewer employees. And when Governor Keating and you and I were working in his administration, the governor appointed me as a small business advocate for the state of Oklahoma. And we worked very hard to make sure that small businesses had the right tools so that they could invest and create jobs and opportunities for our state. And so in this new position as a ranking member, which is kind of like a co-chair, I guess you'd say, with a Democrat leader on the subcommittee, I'll be able to work more specifically on the issues related to small business. And the committee is called Investigations and Oversight. And so it's basically looking at how money is spent, looking at SBA loans, looking at the small business development community centers, looking at issues like Hurricane Katrina and how businesses are awarded money, and making sure that we have a proper accountability for the money.
Now, your background, having represented the entire state, I'm sure that coming into your office is not just the people from the 5th District that you represent. I don't think there's a single Oklahoman on either side of the aisle that plays any kind of role in politics that doesn't know who you are and frankly doesn't have a high opinion of you. So what are some of the other requests that you get? They must be multiple from around the state.
Well, we do have a lot of people coming in to see us. And of course, I tell people, I love Oklahoma, so I tell people as the 5th District representative that I still want to represent the whole state, including your area, but not in a bad way, just that I care about the whole state. And so we do have a lot of guests that come in. You and I are both on Natural Resources, which is a very important committee here in Washington, which oversees oil and gas, Indian tribes, land, water, power. Those issues are very important to Oklahoma. And I've really enjoyed working on that committee on energy issues. I am very passionate to make sure that our nation reduces its dependency on foreign energy and that we do all that we can to help our own companies in Oklahoma and our own companies throughout the nation who are in the energy business to be able to explore, drill, develop new renewable energy, whatever it might be, but all forms of energy, that we work towards helping our nation be less dependent upon foreign countries and their energy.
Well, you've also, I think, gotten a pretty fast start in working, frankly, as you did in Oklahoma, across partisan lines pretty well. I think our viewers and our listeners like to know a little bit. You've gotten a couple of amendments into legislation, which is very unusual for a Republican, let alone a freshman Republican, to be able to accomplish. And they were things that were very significant to Oklahoma companies and interests.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. They were, and it was in the Water Resources Development Act, which had not been reauthorized in 7 years in Washington, and I happened, through my key position on the Transportation Committee, was able to offer 2 amendments that were very important to Oklahoma. One dealt with an area in my district, Edmond and Lake Arcadia, and involved a dispute over a payoff of a loan to the Corps of Engineers, which I felt that the state of Oklahoma had been wronged in this situation. And we got some language in there to clarify that problem. And the other one dealt with Lake Texoma, which is a very important asset in our state, big for tourism in Oklahoma. And as the former chairman of the Tourism Commission, I was able to work on developing a partnership with the private sector and the public sector to bring in private sector money to invest to make that resort one of our best resorts in the whole state. And so we had to have some language changed in federal law to help make that happen.
That was a really critical piece of legislation, and in the sense, I can tell you this obviously from representing the area, to allow private development to take place, basically moving land from federal to state control and putting it in a domain where you could create over time literally hundreds and hundreds of jobs for people in our state.
Oh, the investment down there is going to be wonderful. And we know that Texas people love to come up to Oklahoma and go to our lakes and our resorts in that area of the state. So it'll create a lot of investment, many jobs, great recreational activity, not only for Texans, but of course for Oklahomans. And the other thing we're going to be doing is building a first-class resort and lodge, golf courses, water parks, probably some private sector condominium development. Of course, still keep the state park, and it will still be open to the public to come in certain areas down there. But they're anticipating being able to spend about, I think it's about $100 million. So that's a big investment for southern Oklahoma.
It is a huge investment. Tell me a little bit, again, I want to go back to this issue because you've worked in the executive branch for so many years and focused on the state, now are here. What are you finding are the big adjustments that you're having to make, both politically and personally? Obviously, your life changes pretty dramatically when all of a sudden you're on airplanes going back and forth.
Biggest adjustment, well, probably is that I don't get in a car to go to work anymore. I get in an airplane to go to work, just coming back and forth to Washington. You know, probably my biggest adjustment getting here originally was just learning the way around the Capitol, learning how laws are written differently on the federal level versus the state level, learning about the different federal agencies, and then being able to know how to best apply your knowledge to help your constituents back home. And we really enjoy the constituent side of this job. When someone calls us up and says, hey, I can't get my passport, can you help us with that? In fact, we did such a good job at that back in Oklahoma City that we started having calls from not only Oklahoma, but from outside the state of Oklahoma for people wanting to get help with their passports. So I think just learning the ropes was the biggest adjustment. Of course, it's challenging being away from your friends and your family from home, but we do have a lot of Oklahomans that come to Washington to see us, and that's always a special time.
In terms of looking forward, what are the areas that you really want to focus on while you're in Congress that you think you personally can make the biggest difference for Oklahoma in?
Well, I really enjoy working on the Transportation Committee and being able to work on transportation issues. You and I have dealt with those issues back in state government service and know that transportation is very important to commerce and to jobs and to our quality of life. I enjoy the aviation side of that issue too. I did start the first ever Lieutenant Governor's Aerospace Summit and Expo in Oklahoma, and so I've had a long history of being interested in aviation issues. Small business, of course, is the lifeblood of our economy. And then even our Natural Resources Committee has so many important topics, from the energy sector, which has really helped prop up our economy. You know, right now, the oil industry is doing very strong, and that's been very essential to us. And so those are issues I really like. I also like working on some women's issues. I am fortunate enough to serve as the vice chairman of the Women's Caucus, and so I've been working on women's veterans issues. We have never in our history of our nation had so many women go to war as we have had at this time. And just last week I did an interview with Military Times magazine talking about what can we do as a nation to support our women who are coming back from war, helping them to reintegrate back into society, to go back into the marketplace, to bring their families back together once they've been away, and just some unique challenges they have when they have to leave their children behind, or even some of the single moms that have to leave their families behind, and what do you do with your children when you do go to war.
Now, when you came here, obviously you knew every member of the Oklahoma delegation, but again, because of your background, there are people here and relationships in other states that you have that are very unique. For a freshman, I remember in the heat of your campaign, Madeline Bordallo from Guam, who was a lieutenant governor like you, pulled me aside. We serve on armed service together and said, "How's my friend Mary doing, and is she going to win?" So, are there other lieutenant governors that you've dealt with that are in Congress now, or other people?
There are a couple of us. Mazie Hirano, who is from Hawaii, and of course Madeline, that you mentioned, from Guam, and we're all good buddies. And I think that's one of the things that people want to see more about a Congress is the ability for those of us who represent our states to work on both sides of the aisle, to be able to develop friendships, relationships, to always stand for the principles that we believe in, because that's the people that elected us to represent them, but yet to be able to get things done. I think people are tired of some of the partisanship that we have. They just want us to work on their problems and find solutions and to get things done. And I know that you have a lot of good relationships here in Congress and have had for a long time, and you're well respected in your position. Of course, you're so well respected that you were elected the leader of our whole Republican caucus, which is a huge deal, especially for a small state to have someone in that position.
Well, you're kind to say that, but actually I'm much more in awe of your abilities. I was telling somebody at home recently that I just watched you working the floor, building friendships and relationships on both sides of the aisle. It's the sort of thing that people can't see if they're not literally in the body itself, but that ability, that willingness to talk to people, build friendships, build relationships. But again, you were very successful at that in Oklahoma. As lieutenant governor, you played a pretty leading role in pulling Democrats and Republicans together alike in the state Senate to give us the opportunity to vote on right-to-work legislation. Not an easy thing to do.
Well, you bet, and for sure, I'm talking to the master here. You've been in politics for a long time. You have a great.
That's a nice way to say I'm very old.
No. You have a great grasp of history of politics, and of course, like I said, this is a mutual admiration club. You've served a long time too, and you're used to building relationships, and you understand how important it is.
Well, it's absolutely the key. Talk a little bit about, again, you arrived here obviously as a very well-known figure in Oklahoma politics, and you knew each of us in the delegation had worked with us. Tell us a little bit about how that has gone, the working relationship you have inside the Oklahoma delegation, and the interplay of interest between the different members.
It has gone very well, and I have to say that as I have met other congressional delegations, that they will tell me that they highly respect the Oklahoma delegation because we talk, we get along, we discuss issues. You're on armed services, so we look to you a lot for military issues, natural resources. We look to you on natural resource issues. Congressman Lucas is on agriculture. He's one of the kingmakers in agriculture, and he knows that issue so well. Of course, Congressman Boren comes over to our side of the aisle, and we talk, we go to his side, and we try to work together when we can. Sullivan, and of course all of us, I think, try to work together well. Even our U.S. senators, and get together with us and talk about issues. But I think we have the reputation of having one of the best Oklahoma delegations that has worked well together to get things done as a group for the whole state. And if you have a problem in your district and you need help from the rest of our caucus in getting a bill passed, we're there to help you, and vice versa. And I think it's what's made everything work so good for all of us.
And we also have one of the larger state societies, which is really, I think, it's again something that most people that aren't here are not aware of. And state society are literally people from Oklahoma that are in Washington, D.C., on both sides of the aisle, working in government or around government. And when you go to those meetings, there are literally hundreds of young Oklahomans up here, and not so young Oklahomans up here, too, on staff or that have been here or that are connected. Have you had an opportunity to get involved very much with the society and build those relationships?
I have. I've gone to several of the meetings, and I'm always surprised how many Oklahomans are working up here, because you can find them in different pockets of different agencies, and it seems like if you need something, you can always find an Oklahoman that's related to that particular topic or that agency. So that has been a lot of fun. I of course, graduated from Oklahoma State University, and I went to an OSU reception for all the all the Oklahoma people working in Washington. I was surprised how large just that one little delegation was.
It's pretty remarkable. Now, you've also had the chance in the course of your duties to travel. I know you've been to Iraq, and you know, I'd be very interested to hear your observations on what you saw and the kind of impressions and conclusions you came back with.
Well, I had the great pleasure of going in July, which was right at the tip of the surge, when we were debating here in Washington whether we needed to bring the troops home, whether we needed to send more funding, whether we needed to have a timeline, a deadline. And as you know, we had, I think, 41 votes last year on the war funding and the timing of bringing the troops home. And I thought it was very important to go see myself and to go talk to our men and women who are risking their lives daily to fight for our freedoms. And I know that you've been over there many times, but as a freshman, I wanted to go see for myself. And so I did get to visit with the Oklahoma soldiers, got to meet with General Petraeus and the Iraqi command force leaders and the tribal sheikhs, went throughout Baghdad, actually spent one night there, went into Ramadi, and just I think it was 30, 60 days before, Ramadi had been claimed by Al-Qaeda as their headquarters. And so our American troops, working along with the Iraqi command forces and the tribal sheikhs, had chased them back out into the desert or either captured or killed them. And so things were starting to get better, and the surge was working. And that's what I found when I went to Iraq, was that the increase in the number of men and women over there was making a difference, that there were relationships being built between the United States and the Iraqi command forces, and that life was getting better for the Iraqis. You know, as I have told people, I want the war over as soon as possible, and I want our troops to come home as soon as they can. I'm very concerned about the cost of the war, and I'm also devastated by any loss of life. But on the other hand, I also know what it feels like as a state when you have a terrorist attack upon your state. You and I were both in office during the Murrah bombing. When I saw what happened on 9/11, when the airplanes went into the buildings or into the Pentagon, I knew in my heart, you know, what had transpired that day. And I've always told people that we need to do all that we can to stand behind our men and women who are fighting this war. Let our commanders on the ground make the informed decisions. They have more information than you and I even have, because they're there every day living it, breathing it. And let them decide, you know, when's the best time when our nation will be as safe as possible. We're always going to have threats, but be as safe as possible, and to let them do the job that they were hired to do and signed up to do. And I also want to make sure that we never, ever fight a war on United States soil, that we take the fight to them, and that's what we did.
What were your impressions of General Petraeus when you had a chance to meet him? I've met him several times. I just think he is such a remarkable leader, and just has done extraordinary service for our country.
He is a true leader, a very brave man, well respected by both parties, and he has come to testify many times in classified briefings that we've all had the opportunity to participate in, and he is always upfront, he's always honest, he always tells up-to-date current information. I don't think he ever hides anything from us. He just tells it straight as it is. And I think because of that, he's highly respected by both sides of the political aisle here.
Now, I'd be remiss not to ask you a little bit, because it's been a long time since Oklahoma had a woman in Congress. We actually, with Alice Roberts, I think had the second woman to serve in the Congress of the United States, but until you arrived, we had not had that again. So tell me a little bit about that experience and what that meant, and what perspective do you think that allows you to bring that, frankly, we haven't had?
Well, it has been a long time, since 1920.
Too long.
1920. Mary Alice Robinson, and of course she was a pioneer and a great trailblazer for us other women to come along in her footsteps. But, you know, I take this job very seriously, and I know that women do look to see if I'm going to be successful at this job. I took it very seriously when I was elected Lieutenant Governor, too, as the first woman in the state of Oklahoma. But
probably made it possible for the second woman to get elected, too,
well,
Jerry
I
Aston.
hope so. But, you know, it is so fun to see the young girls who are coming up and becoming interested in politics, that want to intern in my office or volunteer. And hopefully we'll encourage more young ladies to get involved in public service, whether it's working on a campaign, whether it's volunteering their time in a community, or even running for office themselves, that all things are possible if you'll work hard, do your homework, study, be respectable and honest, and women can do whatever they want to do. In fact, we got a woman running for president this year.
Well, she's a very formidable candidate, as we all know. I mean, my mother admired you so much as a trailblazer. She, of course, had served in the legislature as you did, and then watched you go on to just a brilliant career statewide, and I think would have been genuinely pleased to see you now in this very new role. You must get a lot of response from people, you know, that just appreciate the fact that you've pioneered, that you've opened doors for a lot of Oklahomans that maybe never thought of running for office or serving for office before.
Well, I appreciate that, but it was people like your mother, in fact, my mother, who was also a mayor of a little town, Tecumseh, but your mother serving in different capacities and in the Senate. I can still remember her when she was in the Oklahoma Senate, and I mean, it was people like her that blazed the way for other girls like me to come along and to have those doors open so that we could think of things that we might not have thought we could do before.
Well, in the time that we have left, tell us a little bit about, this is a very unfair question, what might be your future? I think you have a limitless future here in Congress. I also think you have a terrific future in Oklahoma. If you wanted to run for governor, you wanted to run for the United States Senate, you know, I know you never think in that way. Opportunities come and open up, but again, I just can't think of anybody that has had the breadth of experience, and that you used your 12 years and your 4 years in the legislature before that to really master Oklahoma in a way that very few of our public officials ever have. I just can't think of a part of the state you haven't been to, or any of the state that you frankly are not knowledgeable about, don't know the decision makers and difference makers out there. So is this your last stop? Are there other openings for you?
Is this one of those television shows where they try to get you to break
No,
news or something?
no. I expect you to not tell me, actually. And I don't think you probably know. I just, again, I just think you have amazing possibilities in front of you.
Well,
And,
thank you.
You've served our state so well.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And all I know is it's a great opportunity and honor to be able to serve your state and then your nation. And it's a rare opportunity that few people get to have, and one that I take very seriously and hope we can continue to do great things for our state. I'm going to be running for re-election this year. That's my number one goal, and who knows what the future holds, but what I do know is Oklahoma is just a tremendous state to be able to represent, and we have such a great reputation among the nation, and everywhere I go I hear people say, you know, the people of Oklahoma are just wonderful.
Well, I think that we're about to move to our close here, but I want to ask you one little quick question in just a few seconds. You got a chance to travel to Hawaii to the dedication memorial USS Oklahoma. What did that mean to you?
Oh, it's such a moving moment to be able to go and see where the USS Oklahoma ship went down, but then to finally put a monument in their memory of the men and women who gave their lives during Pearl Harbor, and to be a part of history.
Well, you were a big part of that. Congresswoman, we're just about out of time, but I want to thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this, Mary. You're just a wonderful colleague and a great friend, and the state of Oklahoma, and certainly the 5th District of Oklahoma, are so extraordinarily fortunate, I think, to have you representing them. So this is Congressman Tom Cole from our nation's capital. Thanks for being here.